Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Joel here, and I'm Blue here. We are back for some more yet again for the likes of the Muxy Toys videos. And we jump immediately onto the forms of Area 3. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more of Let's Play of Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games for the Nintendo Wii U. So, last time we have managed to able to gone through Area 2, and we managed to able to beat the likes out of the forms of Kamek / Magic Koopa for those who lived in North America. And today for this episode is the fact that we're going to be taking on the forms of Area 3, which, as far as we said this before, and I believe Blue said this already, is that Area 3, this is without a doubt the longest area in the whole entire game. For one noticeable thing is that every now and then now is the fact that we actually come across into 5 events instead of the usual 4. And second is the fact that there's 1 or 2 events for that matter that we probably should point things out right about just a moment. But first off, here we go with the first event here, which is 4-man bobsled, which, if you remember from the Olympic Winter Games, the Vancouver 2010 installment, basically it's just basically 4 players onto that bobsled, and that's all there is to know. But the biggest difference is this time around though is the fact that obviously this is on the Wii U, and because this is on the Wii U, as you can see on this little LED or LCD screen or something like that, you know, with that black box over there, that actually becomes like a camera function. So we probably have to cover this up though, just because, well, it might be pretty embarrassing to able to show myself on that particular footage. So that's why I'm gonna have to do that anyway though, so I just want to let you guys know about this. So basically all we need to do in this particular version of this bobsled event is that we need to keep an eye out with the forms of that specific arrows once again, but except the fact that if you go all the way to the long stretch of road when you're trying to keep an eye out, keep up the forms of the arrows themselves, if you go all the way to the end while you're simply able to keep up with the arrow sections, basically it gives you a little bit of a boost of speed. Well, it's unlike the forms of how it does it in the forms of Vancouver 2010, where it's basically kind of like the same thing for Skeleton, which, speaking of which, actually, is the fact that the actual track layout heavily borrowed that from the likes of Skeleton events, so, except it's obviously on the bobsled and all that stuff. Yeah, which I think is pretty noticeable when it comes to certain, you know, layouts of certain events and all that stuff. So, yeah, I think we actually got a new record for this point here, so even then we can able to record that on the forms of network amounts, so, yeah, that's the bobsled. So now let's move on to the forms of the next event, which is another dream event. In fact, we might actually come across into ourselves into 2 dream events in Area 3. And I think that could be also the same applies for at the very end of the game. Even though, sadly to say, is the fact that there are only 9 dream events in this game this time around. Well, 8 if you really want to count for its own thing, but 9 specifically because of how the fact that, well, we'll point that out whenever we get to later portions of this Let's Play. So, here we go on to this next event here, which appears to be Snowball Scrimmage, which I don't know if how I'd like to pronounce that for this point, guys, but even then, no, let's go ahead and use the Wii U gamepad anyway. So, and this takes place in Snow Coliseum, so even then, no, I guess that's pretty much it as far as I can usually describe about this. So basically, think of like the actual football point system, except rather than kicking the actual ball, instead, well, we'll jump right into the actual event itself by selecting Luigi, alongside with the forms of Shadow the Hedgehog, aka the ultimate life form of himself. So, yeah, let's get to it. So basically, you carry yourselves the actual weapons with you, even then though, that all you need to do with this is the fact that, think of like dream snowball fights from the likes of the original Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver 2010, except the fact that the main gimmick of this dream event is that we need to guide the actual ball all the way to the forms of the corresponding goals. Specifically, the ones we need to aim for is in our side. So even then though, the catch is though, is the fact that each players have their health bars. So even then, every time you utilize the snowballs to most of these opponents, as you can see right there, that actually counts as a damage on the actual health bars. And then when their health has been drained, this means they actually temporarily get knocked out. And in order to actually just to win is by simply keep on scoring these kinds of points like this. So that's about it basically. And also the actual background music might be exactly similar to the forms of how it does it in the forms of the Olympic Winter Games in Dream Curling, except this one is actually a little bit more faster than the likes of how it does it in the forms of Vancouver 2010 version. You can able to utilize the actual counterpulse, as you can see right there, for these holes over there, but I'd rather not risk it too much, just because, well, for one thing, it's because we can't be bothered to able to try out these things too much, and second is that we were supposed to be able to score our points on, it doesn't matter which ways we're gonna go, those damn winter trees just keeps on blocking our way. Oh yeah, every once in a while though, is the fact that when some other teams gets fall behind, whenever they got, 0 points so far, the actual shortcut gates will automatically open. So even then though, that some of these team opponents there, as you can see right there, they can at least do that. So even then though, let's not let that happen, because obviously this is how it's supposed to be when it comes to the forms of, this is how it goes basically for this entire dream event like this. So yeah, it's nothing remarkable, but hey, at least it's something, alright? Yeah, but as far as I'm aware for this point, Joel, there's not much else we can able to discuss upon until whenever we get to the third event, which is perhaps one of the worst events ever in the entire game. Well, we'll point that out whenever we get to it, so... And even then, though, seemingly to say that, as we mentioned this before already, this is the longest event in the whole entire game. This is pretty obvious because of how the fact that we've got 5 events, and second is that some of these events, specifically Snowball Scrimmage, and especially noticeable with curling, which we'll get into later, and especially noticeable with the snow day hockey streets or something like that, and we'll point that out whenever we get to it. I do apologize with the lack of commentary for this point, guys, just because, well, there's not much else I can discuss upon. So, apart from there's no news related to anything like that, so I guess that makes it a little bit robust and all that stuff. So for right now, we've already got about 3 points so far, which is actually pretty good. And I think we actually did this pretty flawlessly, though I think about it, despite this is on normal mode. Even though some people seem to do it on hard mode to make it up for a challenge, but I'm probably not going to do that, honestly, just because, well, it might be a little bit time consuming if we keep on losing in some of these events. Although, despite that, however, though, unlike the forms of how it does it in, well, specifically the London 2012 Olympic Games, despite it doesn't have the single-player story mode content, or as it does it on the 3DS counterpart, so, we just got knocked over, but regardless of such, we still got a point regardless, so thank you for that. Anyways, though, yeah, because other than that, though, is that this mode, especially noticeable with the single-player experience on Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games single-player campaign, doesn't take that long, though, compared to the festival seasonal mode. So, and as a result of this kind of stuff, though, and especially noticeable with the original Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games as well, that that particular game can take a while if you're trying to compete in with the circuit mode and stuff like that, unless if you play multiplayer and stuff. But apart from everything else, though, is the fact that this won't take that long to begin with, though, I have to say for this matter, though. Oh, can we even get 5 points? Oh, no! I'm pretty sure they just managed to able to stuck it on here. And for whatever reason, those buttons on the top right corner still showed up, and regardless of everything else though, we did manage to become victorious at the end. Yeah, so nice kudos for that, Joel. Yeah, thank you, Blue Honey. I will say that for this point right now. Alright, so now let's move on to the third event on the forms of Area 3, and this is by far the worst event in the whole entire game, because if you remember from, well, I don't suppose if you've probably noticed by this point, the next event is curling. Now, think about it, if you remember from Vancouver 2010, I feel like that particular version of curling was actually pretty well balanced. But this, not so much, because we'll point that out whenever we jump right in. So here we go in curling, in Ice Cube Curling Center. At least as far as the actual location it says. Because yeah, I like the forms of how it does it in the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, as well as the other games as well. It does manage to take place in certain locations, in certain events. So yeah, you probably get the idea for that. Until in Rio 2016, at least it does manage to give us some description about what the actual locations were originated from. So anyways, let's go ahead and get this started. Even though I will admit though is that the actual starting point is kind of slow at first, just because, well, we have to deal with a strategy time first, which, I have to be honest here, I think a strategy time can be pretty useless in terms of like the single player experience on this particular event, so we'll just demonstrate that as it is. So even then, let's go ahead and deal with the actual delivery time for this point. So now, what makes this a little bit screwed over, unlike the ones that how he does it in Vancouver 2010, is the fact that normally, if you're trying to able to toss the actual thing, well, if you're trying to throw the stone, at least in the forms of Vancouver 2010, is actually well controlled and all that stuff. There's not so much, because there are rarely few times I managed to keep on like throwing it too hard, or especially noticeable like throwing it too little. And as a result of this kinds of stuff, it's pretty luck based every time you're trying to do something like this. Because mind you, Joel, it only requires us to able to utilize the Wii Motion Plus accessory with your Wii Remote at all times. So that way you can expect to able to see this turns out. Although, then again, this is the only installment to able to only feature the Wii Remote Plus, because it only requires it. So anyway, so let's go ahead and, you know, deliver the actual stone to the actual target. So yeah, basically the ultimate goal in this is pretty simple for the most part, if you pretty know exactly what curling is all about. Basically, you need to, you get like 4 stones in each specific end, and whoever gets the closest to the target, it actually counts as a point, such as like we got one right here. So that way we can able to expect the actual the condition of this specific event. So I will say though is that the music is kind of cool, but honestly I kind of prefer the Vancouver 2010's music because of my nostalgia reasons back in 2009 from the actual the music all by itself. But that's probably just me anyway. So you can also just manage to aim the actual cursor to the actual target as much as you want, but then again though, if you really want to deliver the stone to the target, then again it's downright luck-based kind of thing about it, because again, it really encourages us the actual motions and all that stuff. Which, back in the day, when this game was first came out on the forms of November 2013, that the reviewers and critics out there seem to complain about the actual motion controls can be kind of like, feels like unresponsive at times and all that stuff. Which eventually at this point in during the forms of, I would say in December 2013, or especially noticeable in 2014 sometime, eventually the game itself managed to get ourselves a patch update, specifically version 1.2.0, which I think what that means is the fact that it actually fixes all the problems, such as like, you know, with the motion control problems and all that stuff, Blue. Well, it was expected to make it happen, but some other times though, it may have not been common for this point. But at least even then, we're pretty much used to this, but it's just that, well, compared to the previous games, specifically the Olympic Winter Games back on the 2010 era or something like that, or even specifically 2009, I should say, for, you know, the Wii version specifically. And I just think that the Vancouver 2010 installment does have superior controls, because it, you know, it doesn't require us to able to give us the motion a Wii Remote Plus to require to play the actual thing itself, unlike this is. And then especially noticeable with London 2012 installment as well. And well, despite with Rio 2016's you know, the absence of motion control style, because even then, they're going back into the button controls and all that stuff. But even then, that's as far as I can say about it. So yeah, we forgot to say for this point, guys, is that today stays the forms of I would say today is the 21st of December today. So even then, let's talk about the forms of a few things before we're able to actually continue things on with the forms of Area 3 so far. One thing we totally forgot to mention about this ever since the very beginning of this Let's Play, recently is that Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker has recently released on the big screen. And as far as reviews are concerned for that specific final installment of the forms of the Star Wars saga, if I like to say for this point right now, unfortunately though, out of all the actual the three modern, specifically the three Star Wars new films as far as ranking as far as I'm concerned. Well, we'll point that out whenever we're able to look it up at some form or another. But for now on, though, we'll try our best if we're able to hopefully try and make it to the actual target right there. Although, seemingly to say, though, is that somehow the actual reviews of the critics for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, sadly, it has been received as in 58% out of 100, which is very unusual because unlike, The Force Awakens, which is specifically Episode 7, and especially noticeable with The Last Jedi, which, because it's basically just Episode 8, and as far as I'm aware for that, well, we'll point that out whenever we discuss upon the actual comparisons between most of these Star Wars franchises, basically. So even then, we'll discuss more on that later. So anyways, I suppose that's pretty much as far as I can say when it comes to curling itself. Usually, relatively speaking, about the fact that this is without doubt one of my least favorite events in the whole game. Probably because, well, unless if you're trying to fast forward to just make things a lot faster, you can like hold down the minus button if you really want to make things a lot faster in case if you go bored of it. But regardless of everything else though, it's pretty much a watered down version of the Vancouver 2010 version. Apart from the music itself is alright, but even then though, that at least unlike the Vancouver 2010, you can skip the whole thing. But unfortunately though, for Sochi 2014, in order to actually make things faster, is that you need to hold down the minus button at all times though. But that's just probably the only nitpicking part about that. Although, as far as I remember something, Blue, is that I remember back in, well, it's no longer there in our old Let's Play of this game, that somehow they lost to this particular event, probably because of how random that is. Well, every now and then now, hopefully we can able to succeed by this by simply knocking over the Yellowstone, so that way we could able to actually make that Yellowstone go further away than the forms of how it does it for all four of those stones, as you can see right there. That is top-notch and amazing. Oh wow, we got ourselves an instant victory right there, Joel. Thank you. Or, in this case, Blue, we pretty much did it, as far as I'm aware. Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Anyway, so that takes care of curling. Easily, we managed to able to get that event over with. So, thank goodness for that. Even though we don't need to replay that event again though, but still, if you really want to get your first experience on this, good luck. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the forms of some sort of a fun event, such as like the next dream event we're going to be hit onto right now, which is
Snow Day Street Hockey!
Yeah, Snow Day Street Hockey. That's why you said this correctly, Joel. Now, what makes this unique is the fact that we'll point that out right away. We'll try to edit out the forms of some video clips so that we can able to show you guys some different segments where it comes to the forms of this dream event. And this obviously takes place in Delfino Plaza from Super Mario Sunshine. So, naturally speaking, that this is before when Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U does manage to bring back that particular stage, but this time around in full HD makeover. So relatively speaking, this is the first time we've ever going to be seeing Isle Delfino in HD for the first time, which is pretty amazing kind of thing about it, but it might be actually be a little bit lacking in depth sometimes. But anyways, let's get this thing to it. So before you're able to jump right into the actual match, there are 3 different segments where every time, if you want to go for a voting system, basically, that depends if you play single player or the multiplayer, if you will. You always have to pick up with the forms of the majority vote. But if one of them gets the majority vote, they will be forced to jump right into one of those segments on the forms of this event. So, but of course, as you can see on screen, that we're actually going to be playing this, we're actually recording this on the forms of the single match mode, because we don't feel like missing some of these parts, but we'll have to show this off anyway. So even then, the first section right here is the Market Straight, where it's like a standard ice hockey stadium, basically. But the biggest changes between the forms of the original ice hockey is that obviously the actual shape is a little different. And second is that if you come across into the forms of those banana peels, as you can see right there, well, we'll point that out whenever we get to it. As well as from that, we also get ourselves the forms of that specific springy thing during the forms of some parts of the actual goalie sides. So, and every time you interact with that, it allows you to bounce a little bit higher. And then, basically, that's all it does. But however, though, when it comes to those piantas with those banana peels, as you can see right there, that if you immediately walk into them, it'll actually cause the actual banana peels to able to spread out. And then, basically, this will be recommendable, though, if you really want to let those computer players get slipped up. And then, basically, you can able to steal the plank if you want to able to score goals within. So, aside from everything else, though, the actual goal in this is basically a similar thing as how it does it in the regular ice hockey, but except with noticeable differences here and there. Although, eventually at this point, Blue, we'll discuss more on that later, so even then, though, we'll hopefully try to score our goals for this point. Hopefully, whenever we show this off, then we can able to jump right back into the forms of Legend Showdown mode, so that way we can able to face off against with the doppelgangers themselves. So here we have ourselves the bonus goal chance, where basically at certain points throughout the match, basically we get ourselves the forms of the bonus goal. Sorry for a little bit of a awkward commentary for this point, because, well, I almost choked for a moment. So yeah, basically, as you can see right there, despite we actually missed the actual bonus goal, as you can see, at certain points throughout the match, specifically in a Market Straight, depends on what time you're in, I think basically in order to actually just to get to the bonus score is the fact that you can either shoot it from any direction, or specifically if you're able to charge up your power shots, then you'll instantly get yourselves not 1 but 2 points. So naturally speaking, if you really want to win the actual events itself like this, especially on a harder difficulty, well, the bonus score will be a recommendation for you. Although there's actually an easy way you can able to get the bonus score, but we'll point that out whenever we show off the coin straight. Yeah, because this might be pretty fascinating if those of you want to able to score as many points as you can. Yeah, because even then though, aside from everything else though, it plays pretty much exactly the same as the regular ice hockey, except with a few unique twists and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and... Oh! Instant goal and... What the hell? What the hell was that with that plank? It just somehow managed to able to bounce off for that specific goal right there after using a power shot. That's pretty hilarious. Anyways though, so let's go ahead and continue things on for this point. So, alright, so let's go ahead and do some sort of like a passing for each other. Yeah, because usually kind of think about it, much like football, passing is always the key here, because even then, passing to each other, well, in terms of teammates as far as they're concerned, not the opposing team, but to be more specifically, your characters throughout your entire team, that is always recommendable if you're trying to pass it to each other, because the more you pass, then the more powerful shot you can able to just perform. So yeah, there's the bonus goal, so hopefully we'll get a chance to score here. And, well, basically you get yourselves 2 points as opposed to 1. So yeah, at the moment we got 8 right now, but we'll cut this off when this match is over, so that way we can jump right back onto the forms of the Legend Showdown match, in terms of the forms of, you know, Dream Ice Hockey, basically. So that concludes that particular segment, so yeah. Alright, so back onto the forms of Legend Showdown version is that, well, obviously we've already showcased off the Market Straight. Now let's move on to, what do you think we're going to go for, Blue? Let's go ahead and showcase off Main Street next. Which is basically, it's like a circular ice hockey field. So it's nothing that much specific throughout, but at least we able to actually just mention about more on that whenever we get this thing started. So, and now we face off against with the doppelgangers of ourselves, basically. So, alright, so here we go. Yeah, as you can see right there for the distance right there, is that we actually get ourselves some sort of like a similar money slots or something like that, where basically in order to actually just make things easier for you to able to win these kinds of stuff like this, is that if you aim your plug onto the forms of those little tiny slots, as you can see all over there in the distance over there, that eventually at this point, although first off, let me just go ahead and score 1 point for that power shot. So hopefully we'll able to actually just win this for sure. I kind of wish we can able to customize our number of round periods. Specifically, we can able to show off all 3 in this one particular sequence notice. But unfortunately, for the sake of time, that we're only just going to have to do this for the sake of the forms of some editing software as far as I'm concerned. So, but anywho though, aside from all that stuff though, with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, is that they got about 58% out of 100, which is very weird, because compared to some critics' reviews of the forms of, let's just say, The Last Jedi, for example, that the reviews of the critics for The Last Jedi, which did happen in 2017, at least they did manage to get themselves 91%. But as for fans though, they simply managed to, or the audience score I should say, only gets like 43%, because, well, they seem to find us a little bit disappointed for that regard after the actual hypes of it. Although compared to the forms of The Force Awakens, which is episode 7, everyone is like super hyped about it, including the forms of the critics themselves. However though, as far as critics are concerned with The Rise of Skywalker, well, unfortunately for this point right now, I can't really tell you things too much, because at the moment right now, we're talking about the forms of the Rotten Tomatoes review of those specific stuff, because we always looked up on certain reviews, they actually did look it up on that specific overall thoughts and all that stuff. And talking of which, actually, Joel, is the fact that there's actually another film that just came out during the likes of yesterday, which appears to be Cats. So, and seemingly to say, unfortunately though, that particular film has got itself a pretty bad review, such as like 17% out of 100, which I think it might be pretty obvious, because it looks exactly much like, or is kind of like the equivalent to the forms of the live-action movie of A Cat in the Hat, because what in the hell was that pretty much necessary to able to place in people's faces into their cat costumes at the same time? I mean, jeez, it's like Cat in the Hat's live-action movie all over again, except with, well, ruined certain elements compared to... I know it's actually based off from the musical of the cats themselves, but I've seen it before, but I haven't really exactly get my full experience of it yet. But let's just say this right now about the fact that I'm still pretty hoping to see Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker eventually. And then we'll talk more about our final thoughts of it though, without any sort of spoilers territory. And we're probably not going to mention about it too much, because I'll let Mario will able to mention about more on that until, you know, the final 2 videos for his Let's Play of Super Mario Odyssey, specifically towards at the very end of December month, and especially noticeable for the entire year. So, yeah, that concludes the forms of the main street, I should say, on the first period. And now let's go ahead and show off probably my favorite street in this entire dream event, and that appears to be Coin Street, which, as you can see, this could be completely filled with those blocks. And what can we do with them? Well, you notice there's actually a P-switch that you can see in the distance over there. Well, we'll point it out whenever we're able to get this period started. So, and this obviously takes place almost near to Gelato Beach, where it's normally located on that lighthouse. So basically, every time you come across that P-switch, well, this happens, as you can see for that doppelganger just managed to activate it. This actually turns those blocks into those coins, which even then, as you can see on this little coins counter, is that if you reach to a specific amount of coins, most notably with 8 of them, basically what happens is the fact that, well, it allows you to able to access to the bonus score, which I think is actually way easier in comparison to the forms of, let's just say, the main streets, because I have no clue of how to get the bonus score active on the forms of that specific main street, but it's actually way easier in the coin street for sure, because even then, though, it depends on how much coins you're going to be collecting. It's actually pretty easy to able to achieve from, despite with some computer players might actually throw you off a little bit. So even then, though, let's go ahead and get that in, and we got ourselves another 2 set of points. So even then, though, top notch for that. Even though we've already discussed upon the forms of how the bonus points chance actually goes. So, another thing we'd like to talk about this is the fact that one thing that Mario, or Sonic for that matter, has not mentioned about this during the forms of, let's just say, in the Super Mario Odyssey Let's Play, as well as the forms of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix so far. Basically, what happens is that the Mario Kart Tour actually got themselves a new tour, which is specifically based on a holiday season, which specifically it actually contains 2, well actually not only 2, but 3 characters they actually did brings us into the forms of Mario Kart Tour so far. So let's get started with the forms of the discussion, which is specifically the special versions of specifically Yoshi and Pauline. Which, by the forms of Yoshi, he actually managed to dress up himself as a reindeer or something. And as far as Pauline, as far as I'm concerned, sorry for a little bit of a tongue twisting in the end, guys. She's actually on the actual holiday costume or something like that, which to be it makes it pretty obvious because of the actual Christmas seasons and all that stuff. And as a matter of fact, though, Blue, they also did manage to bring back probably my favorite Mario Kart 7 track that has now finally makes its return by the forms of Rainbow Road. So yes, the Rainbow Road from Mario Kart 7 has now finally made a comeback, and it actually plays out very similar to the forms of the normal version, basically. Well, for one obvious thing is the fact that obviously it splits into sections, basically. And second is the fact that it almost, well, it actually plays out, sort of feels like the music itself plays out exactly identical to the forms of the original counterparts on Rainbow Road. And finally, perhaps the most notable thing is that it actually has, well, let's just say 3 laps / sections. So this is the only Mario Kart Tour track that actually includes 3 laps / sections. So I really appreciate about that stuff, which I kind of wish it does that on other tracks in theory, but unfortunately for the sake of time, we didn't get a chance to do that. So anyways, let's move on to the forms of the final event in Area 3, so let's see what rival are we going to be competing against this time. In this case, we got ourselves Jet the Hawk, the leader of the Babylon Rogues. Yeah, despite the fact that Wave the Swallow wasn't on here, especially noticeable with Storm the Albatross, but at least it wasn't until in Rio 2016 that Wave the Swallow was actually in it, but she actually becomes a playable character along with Jet the Hawk. But I have no idea why that Storm the Albatross was not involved, but I'm guessing it's probably because he was struggling to think of something, I suppose. I don't know, it's just a little bit of a coincidence anyway. So, the actual event that's going to take place is Snowboard Parallel Giant Slalom, which is basically, it's kind of like the same thing for alpine skiing downhill, except, well, we're going to be now using snowboards. And I think this is one of those new events they actually introduced in this game as well. So, relatively speaking, that we actually discovered something new in during forms of that specific installment of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, basically. And obviously we'll most likely focusing on the Wii U gamepad, basically. So even then, honestly, is that some of these events, well, the only exception is of course curling, is that most of these events we're going to be using the Wii U gamepad the whole time. And again, just like the forms of snowboard cross, I highly recommend you do a drift if you're about to almost try to miss the actual gates themselves, because that way it allows you to be able to drift, and then it makes things a lot easier for you if you really want to win these kinds of stuff. So, and much like the forms of how it does it on downhill alpine skiing, is that you really can't afford to miss these little gates, because, well, obviously, since we did miss one of them, this means we get ourselves penalty times. So, we're really hoping we can win this, because just like in curling, even though despite the fact that the original Let's Play of that game was no longer there, that somehow we managed to lose this, probably because of penalty times and all that stuff. Luckily for us though, we did manage to succeed. Yep, due to the forms of that specific drift as we on about. So yeah, you probably get the idea for that. So yeah, basically you just have to like keep on bypassing those little gates as they're shown. So basically you just have to be very cautious without like missing any of them. So, and that's pretty much it with Area 3. Easily the longest area of the whole entire mode in terms of Legend Showdown. And as far as we're aware for this point, guys, we actually did pretty flawlessly so far. Like, we did manage to dominate through Area 1 and Area 2, and now Area 3. So who knows, we're able to find out in Area 4, and especially noticeable with Area 5. And speaking of which, we've only got about 8 more characters to show off in terms of the actual game itself. And we'll talk more about specific one little detail until in the future though. But for right now though, we once again got ourselves the A+ rank. So yeah, that's pretty awesome, don't you think? Yep, despite with the forms of the snowboard parallel giant slalom, because we accidentally bypassed the actual gates to begin with, because we actually accidentally got ourselves a penalty time. So, but anyways though, so now we can select you know, Area 4 or Area 5, but of course we have to go in a chronological order. So in this case, join us next time, and we'll end things off here. So join us next time on Let's Play Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games. Is that we're about to be moving on to Area 4 in the forms of Legend Showdown. So hopefully we can able to dominate for that as well. So see you guys tomorrow for that. Yeah, later fellas.